When you think of classic TV comedies, Sanford and Son is always at the top of the list. The sharp humor, unforgettable catchphrases, and the larger-than-life presence of Redd Foxx made it a true television gem of the 1970s. But behind the laughs and the iconic "You Big Dummy" moments, there were secrets, struggles, and surprising truths that most fans never knew. So, what was really going on behind the cameras that viewers never got to see? Let's find out.
Oh, this is a big one. You hear that, Elizabeth? I'm coming to join you, honey.
Redd Foxx, the man who brought Fred Sanford to life, eventually opened up about the behind-the-scenes reality, and what he revealed might completely change the way you see the show. Long before the world knew him as the grouchy, sharp-tongued junk dealer on Sanford and Son, Redd Foxx was already a legend in comedy clubs. Known as the king of the party records, he built his name on raw, no-holds-barred stand-up routines that pushed boundaries and made audiences roar with laughter. But when television came calling, Foxx stepped into a role that would not only make him a household name, but also break new ground for black actors on TV. When Sanford and Son premiered in 1972, it was unlike anything audiences had seen before. Based on the British hit Steptoe and Son, the American version starred Foxx as Fred G. Sanford, a wisecracking junk dealer, alongside Demond Wilson as his long-suffering son Lamont. The setup was simple: father and son running a salvage yard in Watts, California, but the comedy was anything but ordinary. The show was bold, full of sharp racial humor, quick comebacks, and the kind of unfiltered truth that made people laugh while also making them think. It was funny, it was messy, and it was real. More than just a sitcom, Sanford and Son changed television. It gave viewers a hilarious look at family dynamics and everyday struggles while also breaking barriers for black-led comedies in prime time. Fox's over-the-top heart attack scenes, clutching his chest and shouting, "This is the big one, Elizabeth," became legendary. His put-downs, especially the famous "You Big Dummy," directed at Lamont, are still quoted decades later. But while fans enjoyed the laughs, what was happening behind the scenes was a very different story, full of tension, personal battles, and surprising truths that Redd Foxx later revealed in a way no one expected. Redd Foxx had a famously complicated relationship with his Sanford and Son co-star Demond Wilson, but nothing shocked fans more than the moment Foxx actually walked off the show. At the height of the show's success during the 1973-74 season, Foxx left production in the middle of taping. On the surface, he cited health concerns, but behind the scenes, it was clear his departure was fueled by money, ownership, and power struggles. At the time, Redd Foxx was making $19,000 per episode, a huge salary for the 1970s, but one that he felt didn't match the value he brought to the show. After all, Foxx was the show. His quick wit, sharp one-liners, and unforgettable delivery of "You Big Dummy" had turned Sanford and Son into a household favorite and one of NBC's most-watched programs. But Foxx wanted more than just a paycheck. He wanted a real stake in the series. Specifically, he asked for a 25% ownership share, believing that his work and creative presence deserved to be tied to the show's long-term profits. The producers, Tandem Productions, didn't take kindly to his demands. Instead, they slapped Foxx with a massive $10 million lawsuit, putting the entire show in jeopardy. To cover for his absence, the writers came up with a storyline where Fred Sanford was away in St. Louis attending his cousin's funeral. In the meantime, Fred's best friend Grady, played by Whitman Mayo, took over the household and kept the laughs coming. While Mayo did a solid job, fans knew something was missing. Without Fred's sarcastic jabs and big personality, the show didn't feel quite the same. In the end, Fox's bold gamble paid off. By June 1974, the dispute was settled, and he walked away with a huge victory. His new deal not only raised his salary to $25,000 per episode, putting him on equal footing with Carol O'Connor, who was dominating television at the time with All in the Family, but also granted him 25% of the producer's net profits. It was a groundbreaking win, especially for a black actor in the 1970s, and it cemented Fox's reputation as someone who knew his worth and wasn't afraid to fight for it. But the victory also came with a cost. His battle with the producers strained relationships on set, and his ongoing clashes with Demond Wilson created tension that sometimes spilled over into the show itself. Director Alan Rafkin, who worked on the series, didn't hold back in his memoir Cue the Bunny on the Rainbow. Rafkin claimed that working with Wilson was a nightmare, calling him one of the most evil actors I have ever worked with. He accused Wilson of refusing to respect the rehearsal process and said he constantly needled Redd in ways that kept the tension alive. Instead of focusing on building chemistry, Rafkin painted a picture of two men who seemed to thrive on pushing each other's buttons. But it didn't stop there. According to Rafkin, both Foxx and Wilson sometimes brought real guns onto the set, and shockingly, they weren't just props. The two allegedly messed around with them while under the influence, creating a dangerous mix of ego, conflict, and recklessness. For those working behind the camera, it was a powder keg waiting to explode, even if audiences at home never saw the cracks in the picture-perfect comedy. What's even more fascinating is how this chaos fed into the show's energy. That friction between Fred and Lamont often felt so real because in many ways it was. The barbs, the rolling eyes, and the quick retorts weren't always just acting. They carried the weight of a relationship that was equal parts brotherly, competitive, and strained. It gave Sanford and Son its bite, but it also made working on the series unpredictable and, at times, unbearable for the people stuck in the middle. When Redd Foxx finally left Sanford and Son after season 6, the future of the show hung in the balance. Foxx wasn't just the star, he was the heart of the series, the name people tuned in to see every week. But Demond Wilson, who played Lamont, wasn't ready to let the show die. Wilson saw a chance to step into the spotlight and carry the series on his shoulders. Confident that the show could survive without Foxx, he asked NBC to let him continue with a raise in pay that it was a bold move. Wilson believed the father-son dynamic was strong enough that audiences might accept Lamont running the show, perhaps with some new storylines or supporting characters to keep things fresh. After all, by this point, Wilson had become a household name too, and he felt he deserved both recognition and better pay for his role in keeping the show alive. But NBC wasn't convinced. To the network, Sanford and Son without Redd Foxx was like peanut butter without jelly. It just didn't work. Viewers tuned in for Fred Sanford's wild schemes, his dramatic fake heart attacks, and his constant bickering with Lamont. No matter how talented Wilson was, NBC didn't believe fans would embrace the show without Fox's larger-than-life presence. So they denied Wilson's request, shutting down the idea before it could even get off the ground. The rejection left Wilson frustrated and resentful. He had invested years into the show, only to be told he wasn't enough to keep it going. It also marked the beginning of a long stretch of tension between him and the network, as well as with Foxx himself. What could have been a second act for Wilson turned into the end of the line for Sanford and Son, proving just how much the series relied on Fox's star power to shine. Despite the clash over the fate of Sanford and Son, Demond Wilson would later open up about how he truly felt toward Redd Foxx, and it wasn't anger. In fact, Wilson went out of his way to make it clear that he never carried animosity toward his TV father. By the time Foxx walked away from the show in 1977, Wilson already had a safety net of his own. CBS had offered him a $1 million contract to star in Baby, I'm Back, a sitcom about a man trying to rebuild his life after abandoning his family. For Wilson, this new deal meant security, freedom, and a fresh chance to headline a show on his own terms. But even with that opportunity in his back pocket, Wilson admitted that what stung wasn't Foxx leaving, it was how he left. Wilson didn't hear the news from his co-star, the man he had built years of on-screen chemistry with. Instead, he found out casually in the hallway at NBC when a newscaster mentioned it to him. For Wilson, that was the real wound. He wished Foxx had come directly to him, had said, "Son, I'm done. I can't do this anymore." That conversation never happened, and it left Wilson with a bruise on his heart. Still, Wilson never let that disappointment harden into bitterness. He forgave Foxx, because the bond between them was bigger than one moment of miscommunication. Wilson once said, "I forgave him, and I loved Redd, but I never forgot that." It was a statement filled with honesty and tenderness, a confession that while the hurt was real, the love endured. And that love wasn't just something Wilson talked about years later. It's right there on the screen. Watch any episode of Sanford and Son, and you can feel it. The laughter, the bickering, the banter, it was rooted in a genuine affection that neither fame, frustration, nor Fox's sudden exit could erase. Wilson's words give fans a window into the complicated but heartfelt relationship between the two men. They weren't perfect, and their careers sometimes pulled them in different directions. But at the core, there was respect, admiration, and a kind of father-son bond that television couldn't fake. That's why decades later, audiences still see the spark when Fred and Lamont Sanford walk into the room together, because behind the characters stood two men who, despite everything, truly loved each other. Even though Demond Wilson insisted he held no hard feelings toward Redd Foxx after he quit Sanford and Son in 1977, fans couldn't help but wonder why Wilson never came back for any of the follow-up projects. After all, the chemistry between Fred and Lamont was the heartbeat of the show. Without Lamont, many felt like something was missing. When NBC tried to keep the Sanford name alive, they first spun off Sanford Arms in 1977, a series that followed the goings-on at a boarding house near the Sanford residence. Then, a few years later, Redd Foxx returned with Sanford in 1980. But in both cases, one glaring absence stood out. Demond Wilson wasn't there. Fans who had watched the bickering father and son duo for years couldn't picture Fred without Lamont. The missing piece was obvious. Behind the scenes, it wasn't as simple as Wilson refusing to work with Foxx again. By that time, Wilson had moved on to other projects. After Sanford and Son ended, he starred in the CBS sitcom Baby, I'm Back, and later focused heavily on his ministry work. He was carving out a new chapter of his life, and in many ways, stepping back into Lamont's shoes may have felt like going backward instead of forward. Still, his absence left fans scratching their heads. Did the clashes with Foxx on set play a role? Did the rocky relationship with NBC make him reluctant to sign on again? Wilson himself always kept the door cracked just enough with his comments, admitting his love for Foxx, yet making it clear he had been hurt by how things ended. So, when the sequels rolled out without him, audiences were left to imagine the what-ifs. What if Lamont had returned? Would the magic have been revived? Could the franchise have lived on longer? Those questions remain part of the fascinating legacy of Sanford and Son, a show where the behind-the-scenes drama sometimes rivaled the comedy on screen. Redd Foxx's life off-screen was a roller coaster that few fans fully understood. To think that the man who made millions laughing in living rooms across America could end up struggling to keep his home and possessions is almost unimaginable. Foxx, known as the King of Comedy, had earned as much as $4 million in a single year at the height of his career. But fame and money couldn't shield him from the very real pressures of financial mismanagement, lavish spending, and personal obligations. His divorces added a heavy burden. After separating from his second wife, Betty Jean, he had to pay over $150,000 in legal fees and $10,000 a month in support. His third marriage wasn't any easier. He paid $2,500 a month during the separation from his third wife, Joy, and eventually settled with her for $300,000 in 1981. By 1983, Foxx was forced to file for bankruptcy, a process that dragged on for several years. Then, in a shocking and highly publicized move, the IRS seized his Las Vegas home and 7 vehicles on November 28, 1989. Among the seized vehicles were a 1927 Model T, a 1975 Panther J72, a 1983 Zimmer, and even a Vespa motor scooter. The IRS also took $12,769 in cash and a dozen guns, reportedly leaving Foxx with just his bed. At that point, the tax debt had grown to nearly $1 million, equivalent to over $2.5 million today. Thanks to penalties and interest, these struggles show that life for Foxx was never simple, even after achieving incredible fame. Behind the wild humor, the "you big dummy" catchphrases, and the on-screen antics of Fred Sanford, there was a man facing the harsh realities of money, divorce, and bureaucracy. Fans may have laughed along with him for years, but few realize the weight he carried off camera. Despite all the setbacks, Foxx never lost his comedic spark, and his ability to make people laugh in the midst of personal hardship is part of what made him such a beloved and enduring figure in entertainment. Even in the face of bankruptcy, seizures, and personal turmoil, Foxx's legacy remained intact. His story is a stark reminder that behind every TV legend, there is a human being facing struggles that the camera never shows. A reminder that the life of a comedian is often far more complicated than the laughs they give. The years have passed, but the memory of Sanford and Son still lives on in the hearts of fans. Naturally, people can't help but wonder, where are the cast members now? Sadly, most of the familiar faces from the show are no longer with us. Redd Foxx, who made Fred Sanford a household name, died in 1991 after suffering a heart attack while rehearsing on set. Demond Wilson, who played Lamont, has since stepped away from Hollywood, but he remains a beloved figure for fans who grew up watching him spar with Foxx. Lynn Hamilton, who played Donna Harris, is also gone, as are Nathaniel Taylor, the smooth-talking Rollo, Whitman Mayo, Fred's hilarious friend Grady, and LaWanda Page, the fiery Aunt Esther. Their departures have left a hole that fans still feel today. Yet, a handful of cast members are still alive, including Hal Williams, who played Officer Smitty, and Howard Platt, Officer Hoppy Hopkins. And while the surviving cast may have moved on to quieter lives, their work on Sanford and Son continues to bring laughter to new generations, proving that their legacy is far from forgotten.